Good evening, colleagues. My name is Sithakazelo Dlamini. I have the pleasure of being in your company this evening. I think more than anything, I welcome the colleagues who are in attendance. Colleagues who are in attendance and the entire Nelson Mandela University community. We gather today to mark Black History Month during a time when there are a lot of challenges facing Black people across the diaspora. We also come, I think it would be amiss for us to honor this day and have this conversation without having a moment of silence for the news that a lot of us woke up to yesterday of the death of American activist and academic and pioneer of excellence, of Black excellence in all its forms, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who passed away yesterday at the age of 84. It is under the themes that he carried with him that I think we should approach this conversation. The role of people of African descent in America's prosperity and all of the work that has been done by people of African descent, past and present achievements, I think is an important conversation to have. From the point at which Africa was the supplier of slave labor in the Americas, to fast forward over centuries and centuries later, we are now in a time where you can see it. As a normal person, as a normal South African, just thousands and thousands of kilometers away, you are able to see the influence of Africa in America's prosperity. The concern, though, the question that we want to address today Welcome, colleagues. It's good to have you. So part of the conversation, like I said, is trying to steer the conversation in a way that not only pays homage to the likes of Reverend Jesse Jackson and the legacy of Utatu Nelson Mandela, is for us to find our own understanding of what Africans have contributed to the prosperity of America. But also for there to actually be is there a way for there to be justice in the context of what Africa has contributed? So without further ado and without wasting any more of your time, because I understand we did start slightly later than we had planned, I would like to welcome to the stage the director of CANRAD. He is a phenomenal academic, thought leader in the African context, and also one of the people who lead the conversation in terms of what Africa can do and where Africa can take itself and where we can take Africa as the younger generation of activists. I now welcome to the stage Professor Bheki Mngomezulu.
Sanbonan. Naze nabahle. Ay, siyabonga kakhulu. Yeah, I'm mindful of the time, so I'll cut to the chase so that I don't spend too much time. There are people who have been allocated a space to talk. Mine is just to welcome all of you. We are happy to have you here. There is no event without people who are going to make the event a success. So thank you very much for coming to join us. I will first greet the program director. Somebody told me that if you don't greet the program director, you might be in trouble. because then you will be given 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes. So the best thing then is to be good to the program director. Mrs. Tagazelo Dlamini, who is our media guru, who is then going to lead us today, as Mr. Sobs has said. We call him Prasobs, but then you guys, you can call him Mr. Steerman. We call him Prasobs. I'll tell you how it came after this. And then, of course, I would like to also greet all the colleagues from the university, more especially our staff from Kanrat, which is led by Sis-B. We call her Sis-B. She's doing some stuff. She's coming soon. And then we also have our speaker. I think the speaker is outside. Not in the National Assembly, we have our own speaker, the one who makes things happen. And then, of course, to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, including those who are joining us online. I'm happy and elated that you have honored our invitation to be part of this particular event on Black History Month, which is our 4th Black History Month, having started in 2023. And then today's theme, I'm not going to repeat it because the program director has already done the job. Ladies and gentlemen, we meet here just a few days after the president delivered the State of the Nation address, which is commonly known as SONA. And then that SONA, of course, had mixed reactions after that, some of which are continuing even today. Dr. Kariuki was just chatting to me, saying that there were some bombs that were flowing today, people teasing one another. They always do. That's our politicians, and we love them for that. Sometimes they disappoint us, but it's fine. We meet today also at the time when the university and the South African public is celebrating 36 years of Mandela's release, who was released from prison on the 11th of February 1990. So today, this month marks 36 years since his release. We also meet today on the day when, as the program director was saying, we just heard that Reverend Jesse Jackson passed on in Chicago, and that is a great loss. We also meet at the time, or against the backdrop of President Donald Trump sharing a post that some of you might have seen, a video which portrayed former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes, which was an insult, and it was shared by a head of state. I'm not going to say more than that, but I was totally disappointed and not necessarily angry, because anger would not take me anywhere, but that was something that was very disappointing. A head of state ridiculing another head of state in racial terms. That was totally unacceptable. We also meet basically here at the time when relations between South Africa and America have reached their lowest ebb. We are not in good terms. I don't know if we will get out of this anytime soon. We also meet at this time to make sure that we appreciate everything that has happened both in South Africa and in the Americas, like the program director was saying, and we're hoping that things are going to change for the better. Then one of the questions we pose is, where are the academics when things are going out of the way? That is the $1 million question that hopefully we'll find answers. I'm not going to answer that. And then, of course, the 16th of February, the 18th of February is important on many fronts. In the South African calendar, it was on the 16th of February when here in this part of the world, Amaxhosa lost the 8th frontier war. That is part of that history. And on the American side, in 2006, on the 18th of February, somebody called Shani Davis was the first black American to win a medal at the Winter Olympic Games in Italy. And then some of you then want to say Italy, isn't it? We say Italy to confuse the enemy, but they say Italy. Okay, then that is one of the achievements then that has ever happened. And then 3 days after the 18th, which was on the 21st of February, 1965, Malcolm X was gunned down, only 39 years old. And then that left a political vacuum which we are trying to fill. For these reasons, then, therefore, we are meeting here to remember this Black History Month and then trying to understand where it comes from. I'm just going to say, to use a minute for those who don't understand what it is all about. It started in 1926, and it was called Negro History Week. and it was the brainchild of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who was a historian trained at Harvard University. And the aim basically was to highlight the achievements of people of African descent who were in the Americas. And that is how it all started. Then later on, of course, they had to change it. But the reason why February was chosen was because they wanted it to coincide with the birthdays of two important Americans. One was Abraham Lincoln, and then the other one was Frederick Douglass. So that's why they chose February. And then in 1969, students from Kent State University decided that it must not be Black History Week, it must be Black History Month. That is why then we're having today. Then they started doing it then from 1970. So we've been doing it then since 1970, which means that this year it is the 56th anniversary of Black History Month in terms of history. And then in South Africa, of course, this year we are having the local government election, and we'll hear politicians having a go at one another, including those who are in the multi-party coalition, which they call GNU. And then, of course, they will now be separating ways to try and outpace one another. Now, the question is, does President Trump have the right to isolate South Africa and African countries if indeed people of African descent contributed to America's prosperity? That is basically the question we are trying to address. And I'm not going to say anything further than that, except to say you are all welcome. Please enjoy the lecture.
Oh, no, that's fine. I think I've got it. Thank you very much, Prof. That was an insightful background as to why Black History Month is so important for the institution and why we need to have these conversations. I think after everything that you've outlined and the role of Black people in the prosperity of America, it's important also to have that question and ask the question of the importance, what is justice? What is justice when prosperity has been the result of dispossession over the years? So what we seek to do here is have that conversation and have this lecture as it invites us as well, as South Africans, at a university bearing the name of Utatu Nelson Mandela, to reflect comparatively as South Africans as well, to reflect and reflect on our own struggles against racial capitalism and dispossession, and also realize that the exclusion that we face is not confined only to South Africa. It's confined to the rest of the continent, and whatever is the benefit of the continent should be, whatever has been done by descendants of the continent should be acknowledged as such. That is the question we want to have. So to have a more in-depth conversation about this and to explore these very complex themes, I will now ask that you help me welcome these two gentlemen, these two distinguished scholars and thought leaders in not only in the African context, but in the global context. We have our guest speaker today, Dr. Paul Kariuki. He is a scholar and a policy practitioner. Particularly, his work focuses a lot on democracy and governance and social justice. So he will be our guest speaker for the evening. And then our respondent for the evening will be Brother Ayo Kimati. He's a leading Pan-Africanist activist and thinker. His school of thought is particularly on the issue of power and the power dynamics and how Africa can answer the questions of self-determination and what we claim as ourselves and our own. So without further ado, I will welcome our guest speaker to the podium.
Good evening, colleagues. I'm so grateful to be here today. I always say to my leader and mentor, Professor Ngomezulu, this is home. I've really come to enjoy the partnership that our organization has with CANRED, based on the work that we mutually do, which is promoting really citizen voices in political discourses. And we are based in Durban. And we work nationally and even across the continent through our extensive network of partners, such as CANRED. And I'm so grateful to be back here. I think I was here sometimes in November last year, if I'm not mistaken. And it's always a pleasure to get back home. I always say CANRED is home for us. And I enjoy the partnership that we've had with Professor Ngomezulu and his winning team. I always say it's a winning team because they really do a great job. And I'm grateful again that you made a point to be here today to engage with us this important discussion. It's very important because as Professor Ngomezulu characterized it, it's happening at a very time in our content, in our world where there's a lot of shifts taking place. And we're seeing political upheavals, we're seeing migration challenges, we're seeing countries trying to interpret what does it mean to be an immigrant in one country or another. And these things, they are not happening in isolation. They are happening because there is a context in which they are made to be talking about, but more importantly, when we talk about ourselves as African people, for the longest time, African people have been made to think they are second-rate, third-rate, or even non-existent, as just Prof just mentioned now. And it's a struggle that has met all of us who are in this room, as we just heard about yesterday, the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson. These are men who gave their lives to really fight for their Africanness in the United States of America. But that struggle has not been confined in that country alone. Across our continent, we still have the same struggle. And it's even worse now when it's actually intra-African. African to African, where we call it Afrophobia, and to a great extent also it comes through that negative word that we all don't like to talk about, and that is xenophobia, which is the fear of the other persons. And so the struggle has many dimensions, but for the context of this conversation today, before I get out of my script, it's very hard to talk about the desegregation of African people without going to that kind of spaces, because it's not a theoretical concept, it's a lived reality. And if you've ever moved out of this country to a country where you're made to feel the other, then this kind of discussion really means a lot. It's even worse when we're talking about African people being used as doormats for anything in the context, especially in this case, we're talking about the American country. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go into my discussion I was telling Prof earlier today, I had to get my notes done so that I don't get off the script because it's a very emotive conversation. I don't want to be misquoted. Neither do I want to put CANRED into trouble after I've left. So allow me to read what I wrote, and then I'm sure we're going to have a great, insightful conversation today. And I'm also grateful to have my fellow speaker, respondent, and our speaker today, our facilitator, to meet them today. So I feel very much deeply honored to be able to discuss this or to present my thoughts about this topic because it has a very central place in my own life. I've never been to the United States, but I've been denied a visa 3 times. At first time, I was denied because I was younger than I am, so they suspected I may not come back to South Africa if I go there. And I was invited to go and do a speech at the United Nations Assembly. Then I was in my first year of my doctoral studies, and I was going to talk about localizing sustainable development goals, perspective of African people. I don't know whether that's the topic that made them deny, but actually the official on the other side of the window told me that I'm too young, and they suspect there's likelihood I might disappear in America and I will not come back. And then the second time they denied my visa because they said that I do not have enough assets to prove that I can take care of myself in the United States. So, and it was true. I only had a laptop because that's all I needed to go to the US. I didn't need anything else. How do I carry anything there? And the last aspect was that sometime 2 years ago, and it's not a joke when they say that they actually search for you in the Facebook and all these other social media platforms. So they discovered that I did a speech that they thought that was a little bit anti-American at African Union Summit, where I discussed about, okay, I'm trying to get the word right so that it's much better and smoother. I was talking about why the growing interest of American administration in Africa is anti-Africa. I landed into the wrong place. So I'm still hopeful that at some stage, I was telling Prof that I received an invitation later this year in April, and I'm not sure who I was still going, but when I discussed with, because we work closely with the Consulate General in Durban, I was told I must learn to tone down my thoughts. So because this is an institution of higher learning, I'm not going to tone down my thoughts. Because if there is any problem, they need to go to Prof. Mongamizulu. He's my host, so I'm going to say as I feel, but of course, within the boundaries of respect. So from that perspective, I understand, I have a very personal persuasion that the discrimination of African people when it comes to the United States is not a theoretical experience, it's a lived reality, not only for all of us who are outside of United States of America, but also for the African Americans who live in United States of America. And I think we've seen a lot of news lately and even in the years past how African Americans in the United States of America are still trying to find their voice in whichever space they find themselves, whether it's in the religious space, whether it's in the social justice space, whether it's in politics, whether it's in institutions of higher learning like this one. There is still a struggle for African men and women in the United States to find a place where they can be able to be respected, to be honored, and to influence whatever process they may need. And I'm looking forward to hear what my correspondent will say about that, because we have access to some of these friends of ours who, for the longest time, they still claim that they're still trying to find a foot even after staying there for a decade. And they are academics and all kinds of stuff going on there. So I'm so grateful that I have the privilege to share this in a way that I think it will come across as humane as possible, but also to hopefully to spark some thoughts that we can be able to engage with thereafter. And so as this was themed properly, the role played by African descent in America's prosperity, past and present contribution, I feel it's not just a historical exercise, it's a moral inquiry into how prosperity is produced, remembered, and distributed. It forces us to confront not only who built wealth, but also who has excluded us from enjoying it and why these patterns persist. I would like to punctuate right here to say that I have personal family members who have been in the US for more than a decade, others 2, others 3, that this kind of statement makes a lot of sense to me. Because they are lived realities in the land of the freedom, in the land of prosperity, where freedom, now we know freedom doesn't persist, but it used to be like where freedom persists, it is no longer the case. So I'm saying it's not just a historical inquiry, it's a moral question that helps us or pushes us to confront not only who builds wealth, for who and why, but at the same time, who gets excluded from that wealth, and why do these patterns of exclusion continue to persist? So I think also it's important to mention that this is not an American story alone. I think I had said that in the beginning. It's a global story. If you've had a privilege to be in different African countries, you will see these kind of patterns that I'm talking about, where countries are demarcated according to wealth patterns. And in our country, we also know there are spaces where we go, it looks like it's another country inside another country, yeah? Or another city inside another city. So I'm not going to go there because I want peace. But I want to say that this is a global story, and it's not an American story alone, and hopefully that it resonates very well with all of us in this room, where the legacies of racial capitalism, dispossession, and inequality continue to shape democratic life. And so I want to begin with a fundamental question. Where did America's prosperity come from in the first place? Historians in this room can tell us more about that. I'm not a historian by profession. I'm a public administrator by profession. But I tried to dig a little bit about what this will look like, and Professor Mbeki has given a little bit of that characterization. But I believe that the dominant narrative celebrates the freedom and the entrepreneurship and innovation of African people. Our forefathers who were removed from our continent forcibly and taken to this beautiful country where they were forced to labor and create wealth that they never enjoyed. Most of them died while creating that wealth, and their generations are still paying the price that they paid as our forefathers when they went to this foreign land. The unsettling truth is that that pattern hasn't changed. As we continue to see the current administration morphing itself in different space to create distinctions between African people, not only just African Americans who live in that country. That pattern is a deliberate pattern because it forces people to be boxed into based on their race, based on their origins, and is never anywhere near to create equality that this world desperately looks for at this stage in our history. And therefore, I would say that from the 17th century onwards, enslaved Africans and their descendants who were primary producers of that wealth in what became now United States, they offered their expertise as little as it was in those days. They offered their labor that was often really not remunerated, in a very primitive economic system. They were not appreciated as human beings. They were just units of labor. Let me pause there and ask that question. Has that changed? Has that changed? You said it, I didn't say it, isn't it? Right. And we continue to say that even now, as we continue exploring that path, the way wealth is still being produced not only in the United States, but across the continent and other parts of the world where African people or people of African descent are still being seen as producers of labor, but not people supposed to enjoy the wealth they create. Yet we see that this prosperity has created divisions and exclusions. And of course, the contradiction is between the liberty that they are seeking through their wealth and the bondage that they have found themselves, which is not accidental. It's a foundational, deliberate move to keep African people, as long as we can live, beggars. The struggle's not only there, even after the end of slavery, way back in 1865, did not mark the beginning of economic freedom for African people of African descent. Instead, it ushered in a new and sophisticated architecture of exclusion. Promises of land redistribution, most famously the pledge of 40 acres and a mule, was swiftly abandoned. Formerly enslaved people, in this case the African descent, were pushed into exploitative systems such as sharecropping, convict leasing, and debt peonage, which reproduced the same slavery logic under legal cover, because now at this point it was institutionalized, it was by law. And the decades that followed, African Americans were systematically excluded from credit markets, land ownership, skilled employment, and later from federally backed housing programs through redlining and discriminatory lending. Home ownership for most African Americans, the single most important vehicle for intergenerational wealth in the United States, was deliberately denied to black families. As a result, racial wealth inequality was not again a historical, accidental, or cultural failure. It was a deliberate outcome by the architects of the economy at the time, engineered to humiliate African people, and I'm sorry to say that that has not changed till date. The wealth gap that we continually observe today is cumulative outcome of post-slavery policies that extracted labor while preventing asset accumulation by African people. Has that changed? Has that changed? You said it, I didn't say it. So understanding this history is important in my view because it reveals the inequality that is not inevitable and how it is systematically perpetuated through systems that we embrace and giving African people less and less choices in life. It didn't stop there. Despite those constraints that I've mentioned, people of African descent were never passive victims of the history. In the same difficulties that they experienced, they became thinkers, innovators, and builders of knowledge, even when circumstances were against them. And I think this is where we draw our inspiration. As we know from our history, figures such as Benjamin Banneker, a self-taught mathematician and astronomer, challenged American assumptions about race and intellect. Some of these people went ahead to innovate agricultural science, introducing sustainable practices that rescued entire regional economies from collapse. These contributions by men and women of African descent at that time were not merely the laboring class of the American capitalism. They were also producers of intellectual capital, unfortunately rarely documented for us to read in our present day and age. You can hardly go to any high schools at the moment and tell you about African people and their contribution to American prosperity. We don't know why such stories were not documented so that African children can be able to learn and draw inspiration from those kind of hard labor, people who persevered the worst of the worst in their times to create possibilities that now some of them are enjoying and some are still in the struggle for it. And I think we are also part of that struggle on this end of the world. So they became producers of intellectual capital. They became innovators despite the challenges of limited access to resources. And they became also inspirations to all those who believed a better day is still coming. People like Martin Luther King, the late Reverend Jesse Jackson, and that entire generation of men and women who laid their lives so that we can become today a society that has an idea of what social justice looks like, at least in practice. However, we cannot talk about all this without talking about the role that women played, African women played, in fostering and creating a foundation for social justice, even in the United States. African-descended women stood at the intersection of racial and gendered and class operation, yet they have consistently transformed marginalization into moral authority and political power, saying that even right now in the United States of America, political architecture, there are still African-American women who are involved in organizing grassroots community engagement, they're involved in policy making, and they are willingly to lay their lives, if that needs to be, to keep the frontiers of social justice and dignity at the forefront. Our history, unfortunately, do not document the stories of African women, African-American women, to the extent that it can inform the struggles of African women in their own continent. We still see a lot of women exclusion in power, in politics, in governance, in capital production, in social enterprise, you name it. But some of these gaps have been left because there is no documented information that it can be used to inspire women who had to fight on the back of slavery to create room for themselves and earn, I'm using the word earn, a space at the decision-making table. Has that struggle changed? Okay, you said it. I'm still trying to exonerate myself from any responsibility about all this. As far as our labor is concerned, we still see a heavy-handedness on how our art is being used to dehumanize African people. And we know that beyond culture, African Americans have built and they continue to defend their values and their dignity in America even in today, most of them having served in major US wars, while often being denied full citizenship at home. Through their labor as security providers, built railroads, ports, factories, cities, ammunition factories, and beyond that, they even took their own lives to go to be on the frontiers of war. They fought, receiving nothing in the end. So the great migration that transformed urban America today was actually built on the backs of African men and women who volunteered their lives, not by choice, but because circumstances forced them to stand up for what they thought was right. Again, I ask, has that struggle changed? Okay, you said it. So, the idea is that perhaps the most transformative contribution of African descent lies in the realm of democracy itself, because we can trace it. We can trace it in the names of late Reverend Jesse Jackson, Martin Luther King, and other great African Americans who continue to shape the history of social justice, at the same time pushing the frontiers to give an expanded meaning of what citizenship looks like, equality, and justice. Their efforts have not gone unnoticed. It's worth recognizing there have been reforms that have been instituted by the American administration, the present and the past administrations, to strengthen democratic institutions, trying to enhance America's global legitimacy. Well, I had to sneak that one in because, you know what, we're talking about America. But we know that at the moment, the American global legitimacy is questionable at the moment, as far as democracy promotion is concerned. However, in this sense, African Americans do not merely seek inclusion to be within democracy, but they're constantly reshaping it fundamentally. To the great extent, even some of them have laid their lives for it. They have not lived long enough to see the fruit of their struggle, but they have also not given up in times of pain, exclusion, and great denialism of their existence and their importance. In our contemporary America, we saw a few years ago the ascendancy of President Barack Obama, who symbolized historic progress as an African-American man who rose to the highest office of political office in the country. But however, it also revealed the depth of unresolved structural inequality. Today, there is a growing recognition that symbolic inclusion is insufficient. Just to have a black face is not enough. Because inequality has been produced through policies, reinforced through injustice, again through other policies that reinforce the same exclusion. We've seen criminal justice reforms addressing things to do with incarceration. But it will tell you that most African Americans make the bulk of those who are incarcerated. So the debate is continuing and is shifting towards acknowledgement that inequality is not just financial inequality, it's structural, it's historical, and it cannot be addressed through just dialogues alone. There has to be active changes in the way we structure our economies. The present-day United States is home to a rapidly growing African diaspora, comprising of men and women from different African countries, too many to name, but are contributing significantly to different sectors of the American economy and they continue to challenge those static narratives about blackness confined to slavery and civil rights histories, reminding us that still African descent is still dynamic and very proactive in contributing to America's prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude by saying this: there is no America without African people. And so African people in America's prosperity, even today and the years to come, is not marginal. It's substantial. We have seen a flurry of American administration officials coming into this continent, even today, this year, trying to create economic ties with the same continent, with the same African people, and they are refusing to acknowledge that they have a place to do. To acknowledge this truth is not to diminish America by any ways. It's to create and to strengthen democratic institutions through honesty. So I conclude by saying what our former president, the founding father of our nation, His Excellency Nelson Mandela, reminded us: freedom without dignity is incomplete, and democracy without justice is fragile. So remembering truthfully the atrocities that may have happened to African American people and continues to happen to this day allows our society to rethink how do we repair the harm that has been caused and inflicted among African people, and how do we reimagine prosperity as something to be shared and not something to be hoarded. With those few words, I thank you.
Yes, Doc, you can come through to the hot seat, the seat of questions. I thank you so much, and thank you for your insight on this. I think from the conversation you just had, for me, the thing that stands out most glaringly is the question of intellectual capital that Africa can, or people of African descent continue to volunteer, although without our permission. As someone who is very passionate about digital media and that entire space, I think it's important to always keep in mind the role that, for a lack of a better word, the trends that Africa sets, and understand that part of why some people benefit from it is because they are tuned in to the heartbeat of what is happening in Africa. I think I identified with that a lot. What I will do now is introduce our respondent to this discussion, a gentleman who I was just telling earlier on today that much like himself, I also am in Gqeberha for the first time in my life. All the other times I was in Port Elizabeth, they do not count. I have now come to Gqeberha for the first time in my life. Thank you so much for welcoming me to Gqeberha. Thank you so much. So one of those conversations that we were having earlier on, his name is Brother Ayo Kimati, and he, like I said earlier on, is a Pan-Africanist and a Pan-African scholar who thinks and speaks on Africa's need for self-determination. And I think it was a nice conversation to have about self-determination. Who are we? Do we answer to the things that we are told we are? I answer to being called Beyonce sometimes, but I think for the most part, he will be responding to what the doc had to say. So without wasting any more time, brother, please come through.
Thank you, my brother. My ancestors woke me up this morning, and I was glad they brought me home. Clap it for your brother from the West. I'm back home in Africa. It's been 400 years. You can clap harder than that. Come on, 400 years, and I'm back. Yes. I thank you. I really mean that, too. Let me tell you something. I know this is all off the subject, but I'm sorry, Spirit is just hitting me. Let me just tell you the truth. Every time I land in Africa, I know that I'm home. And I've never been more excited about coming to this continent than seeing what these three men, we call the three kings, in the AES, Baba Goita in Mali, Baba Traore in Burkina Faso, and Baba Chiani in Niger. We say African Union. People ask me this all the time when I come to Africa. I'm on these programs of Pan-Africanism and so forth and what have you, and they ask me the question, what do you think about the African Union? I tell them the same thing every time. What do I think about the AES? I said, I love what they're doing. They said, we asked you about the African Union. I said, the only thing that's the African Union is when I see people uniting and organizing and working together for sovereignty for African people. The only place I see that on the planet today, where men from different nations have said, wait a minute, we're not different nations. You an African, and I'm an African. You want sovereignty, and I want sovereignty. And if somebody tries to take it from you, Ubuntu. I am, because you are. You are, because I am. So if they take your liberty and freedom, they taking what? Mine too. That's a union. That's my African Union. So I thank you for inviting me here. I want to say I appreciate what the brother said. And as I was listening to him, I said, man, he hit slavery. He hit Reconstruction. He hit so much. I said, I got to figure out something to talk about. So I'm going to take it to another place where I like to go, because it's what's in my heart and in my spirit. And since I'm in South Africa, y'all might not know this, but when I was growing up in the 80s, see, we grew up in the 80s. Before this stuff you listening to now that you like to bop your head to, we wasn't talking like that. We had songs called AFRICA, Angola, Soweto, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Zambia, Mozambique, and Botswana. So let us speak about the motherland, speak about the motherland. That's how we was doing. Yeah. We was talking about fighting, and man, we used to see y'all in South Africa running and singing them songs. We be in America saying, that's right, come on, brother. And we like, brother, what? We felt like we were here with you. We wanted to go outside and start a fight because we were like, man, they fighting in South Africa. Y'all captured us from all the way over there. And so that brings me here now. So what I would say about what he said in answering the question of the African contribution to America, we're still Africans, those of us that know who we are. They took us from Africa, but those of us who know who we are, I never signed any document saying I give up my identity. I give up my birthright. I'm no longer committed and loyal to these people on this continent where I'm from. I never did that. I'm just a captive in a foreign land, working the best I can, like he said, to do the best that we can do and survive here. But ultimately, the majority of my people, 1 billion of them, are right there. And I'm not a nice person. One day, we're going to all get strong, and I'm not going to forget what nobody did to us. And we're going to be strong enough to set it straight where we're in control of our own destiny. So, with that said, you want to know the real contribution of African people to America? Have you ever heard of the Haitian Revolution? I want you to stop for a minute, because I'm about to tell you the truth. America was 13 colonies in 1776. 13 colonies. 1/3 of the landmass of what you see today. France was the other third. And then the other west was the Native Americans. Napoleon had the strongest army in the world and had an agenda to rule the entire planet. Napoleon Bonaparte. How many of y'all heard that name before, Napoleon? He was on his way to ruling the entire planet. They ruled 1/3 of what we call America today. Had he continued the path he was going, right now I would be standing up here to you saying, bonjour. Yes, I would. Or bonsoir, maybe, it's evening time. But I'm not, I'm speaking English. Why am I speaking English? Because the richest place on the planet, Saint Dominique, which is now called Haiti, was in an uproar, and they said, we don't care what it takes. Nobody on planet Earth will make us slaves, and we will fight to the last drop of blood, not only ours, but whoever thinks that they can wage a war of tyranny and sovereignty on slavery on us, we will wipe them out to the last one and become free and independent. And in that war, I want you to remember a name. The one who got the final victory. It was so many beautiful Haitian brothers and sisters. But his name was Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Yeah, say it. Somebody was saying, say it loud, brother. Dessalines. He was the leader who finally got the victory. And what happened? France was so broke and so defeated, they had to sell in the best land deal. They said it's the best land deal in the history of the world, the Louisiana Purchase. 1/3 of the U.S. that we have now, that the French owned, they sold for pennies to America, thinking that they would get strong again and come back and take it back. And America got that second third and then said manifest destiny and took the whole landmass. That became America. What am I saying to you? There was no American Revolution that made what we know today as America. It started the process. Who finished the process? Your African ancestors who were kidnapped and enslaved, who went to Haiti, who did something that's never been done in the history of the world. Never before has any group of people been kidnapped and transported to a foreign land, defeated their captors in battle physically. Not no documents we sign. Ain't nothing to talk about. We gonna be free. You say we gonna be slaves. Let's see who wins. Defeated them outright and walked out in front and declared themselves an independent sovereign nation. It's never happened in the history of the world. Your ancestors, right now, and I'm saying this to go to the brother's point. He was saying that black people do this stuff and we're still fighting. Have you ever heard America say thank you to Haiti? Has anyone there ever heard that? So I'm gonna tell you why that's so important. Okay, the Haitian Revolution, there would be no America without Haiti. But wait a minute, let me go further than that. I'm about to wrap it up. She keep looking at the watch. I know that, man. I can talk. No, I understand. I'm okay. I can go. I'm gonna wrap it up. But I wanna just bring this out for you. Because I wanna ask you a question. Is this good technology? I mean, it's pretty good technology, right? You can talk to anybody on the whole planet in a moment. Who made this? Nah, who really made this? Come on, let's be real. He said China. They invented this, right? He thinks it was China. Who invented this? China. Who'd you say? You said a black person? He said China. What y'all think? Watch this. I'm gonna give you his name. Write it down. When you go look at it, you're gonna have tears in your eyes. This black man looked just like me and you. I'm not talking about no might be black. I'm talking about a black man. His name is Jesse Russell. Jesse Russell. Go look him up. Put in Jesse Russell story on YouTube. It's 8 minutes. He made it. Why am I bringing this up? He worked at Bell Atlantic and came up with this. You will see it for yourself. Now, why am I bringing it up? The greatest piece of technology, the most useful piece of technology, is more of these cell phones in the world than maybe people. Everybody has one. Somebody had 2 or 3 of them. See people fumbling around with phones. Here's the thing, though. The intellectual property that made this, the black man. The physical properties in this, Congo, cobalt, coltan, everything you need for this to exist came from African, the mind and the physical. How much money do we make from it? Who's ever said thank you? So I'm wrapping up with this point. Yes, black people have contributed an incredible amount of things in the West, but it hadn't helped us. What we have to do now, since we're coming up with the ideas of technology that change the world, and we have the youngest population of people on the planet, we've been fighting 400 years, tooth and nail on that side, and you all are young, ready, and vibrant here, we got to come together. Everything we've learned in this fight, everything that you have in terms of resource and access to resource and energy, you're young. I'm an old man. Y'all are young. Y'all make me feel good. We bring it together, and then the 21st century is ours. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Oh, yes. My height challenges. Thank you so much for that, Brother Ayo. I think it's very important to have the conversations that also speak on issues why there is a lot of instability in places like the DRC, where the mind to fuel this multi-billion-dollar industry that is technology. Without wasting too much time, I think this now avails us or gives us the opportunity to have the question and answer session of the discussion. What I will ask humbly as a new Gqeberha resident and person who shall now renounce Soweto forever. No, I'm kidding. What I do ask is that when you do you hold off the microphone, I think my sister over there will have one. Is there a second one maybe? Oh, both. Ladies doing it all themselves, love it. So what we'll humbly ask is that when you do ask the question, can it just be short, sharp, to the point, one question at a time? Try not to be long-winded because we are trying, as you can see, we try to make it as short a discussion as possible so that we avail everyone's opportunity to speak. We will be taking the questions. We can begin. If anyone's got a question, are there any? Yes. The gentle brother in the fawn jacket.
Thank you, Program Director. Let me take this opportunity to greet everyone. My name is Ndimpiyo Lutando Kanza. I'm a former national organizer of Umkhonto we Student Movement. Let me start by saying this without any fear of contradiction to our speakers who are still slaves up to now. The system, it is designed not to accommodate us, to enrich us, to build us. Let me quickly go to my 3 questions that I have, or comment or input. Firstly, it's black cultural preservation. We lost the empathy to protect our history, our language, our culture. For example, we're all Africans in the room, but we're speaking English. For a typical example. Second point is the youth unemployment, which is a national crisis or disaster, with the significant rate of 43.8 between age 15 to 34. The reason I'm highlighting the youth unemployment is because we're in the fourth industrial revolution where artificial intelligence has been maximized in the work field. So us as a black people, we cannot compete with technology, with machines. So what do we then to provide the employment in the technological field? Lastly,
No, no, actually, I will have to
Lastly.
humbly request that we stop it at that so that we do give other people an opportunity. Maybe let's just get answers from that question. Colleagues? Doc, if you would like to begin us with an answer to...
Perhaps not an answer, because when you start talking about unemployment in this country, we can go, this night is not good enough to do that. And especially when we situate it among young people, of course, it's a sad thing to see what we are trying to celebrate in our country after 30 years of independence. But I think suffice to say that when we have to look at the issues of youth unemployment, there are so many angles to it. But specifically speaking about the technology, I think there is an appetite, if I put it that way, from our government to trying to create opportunities for young people to enhance their digital skills. While that is commendable and appreciable, I think what is lacking is ability to get to everyone. So the issue is who's getting excluded from the race to get everyone digitally competent. I think that's where the debate is. And until that part is sorted out, the technology has its good and bad. The good is that it makes it efficient for our lives to feel what we feel in this room, because I can tell the majority of us have got these gadgets. The bad of this technology is the many people that are left unequally given an opportunity to participate in that digital process. And for me, if that is not addressed and be made possible so that digital access is a right, a human right, and endorsed to be so that no one is excluded, we're still going to continue to see the difference we are seeing today. And I can assure you that 10, 20 years from today, we're still going to be talking about the same thing.
Brother Ayo, on the questions that the gentleman raised.
Yes, thank you. Two things I would say. The first thing he said, and I think it was important, but I just want to adjust it a bit. He said, we're still slaves until today. I would just change the word a little bit. This is what we learned in the West. Because we were in shackles, half of us accepted that as our plight, or at least a substantial amount of us. Those were slaves. If you accept that condition, you're a slave. But if your mind says, this is not right, even if I don't know what to do, I'm going to change it, you enslaved. Because the moment you get a chance to get out, you'll get out. So I would say each of you have to make the decision. Are you slaves? Do you accept the condition you're in now? Or are you enslaved? Means you're looking for a way to get out. And then in taking that, I'm going to pivot it to where I started. I started in the AES. I'm going to just be honest. If we want to know what sovereignty looks like, since we haven't had African sovereignty since the Mali Empire and Songhai in the 1600s, we haven't seen sovereignty. Let's be honest with ourselves. We don't know what African sovereignty looks like. We now have 3 nations, 3 men who said France, out. US, out. Everybody, out. This is ours. And we're going to partner with some people that got some big weapons. We're going to defend our community. We're going to take the technology, put it in the hands of our young people, and tell them to drive and go forward. Let us look at the examples that we have, then follow those examples. That's how we get to freedom.
Thank you so much, colleagues. In the interest of time, can I ask that we have the next batch of 4 questions, and then we'll answer them in that order so that we don't find ourselves running out of time. If we can have the next set of colleagues who will be asking questions.
Thank you, Program Director. Greetings to the House at large. My name is Liabona Dutam, the current student of NMU. Mine is short. Considering both historical and contemporary contexts, how do you think America's economic and cultural prosperity has been shaped by the often overlooked contribution of people of African descent, and what implication does this have for addressing ongoing systematic inequalities and promoting a more inclusive narrative of American success? Thank you.
Okay.
Molweni, igama nguZiqhamo Roma. Just a vote of thanks to Brother Ayo Kimati. Appreciate your words. Really, really, really exceptional. Secondly, just a comment. Just looking at the Zimbabwe and how they're moving about the economic policies and having 25% given to those international foreign companies and the natives getting 75% share. I think that's a beautiful move towards economic policies geared towards the development of South Africa. Before I ask my question, I also would like to say the most potent weapon used by the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And leading back to then Brother Kimati, my question for you is, how do we then appreciate economic and foreign investment, but in the same breath, we gear them towards our economic growth, but also have regulations for that and not just, blatantly commit ourselves and be in debt? Thank you.
One more.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to our wonderful speakers, Program Director. My name is Mahose Tole, and my question today doesn't just go to our guest speakers. It goes to everyone in this room. My question to you is, do you think there's unity among African people? Actually, let me say this. Do you think there's unity among Black people? I'm looking at you both, my guest speakers. You are both Black people, but you are from different backgrounds. You are from different places, right? And it's slightly touching on what Dr. Karaoke tried to avoid talking about, xenophobia. That we have this thing as Black people. We allow the lines on the map that segregate the land of Africa to segregate us. And if you look across Africa, if you look at it, there are no lines dividing it. But we see those lines on paper and we apply those lines in our daily life. So I ask you today, is there unity among Black people? Here in Africa and those in America? Because we see that every time someone from America says, oh, I'm a Black person, but we're like, you're not really Black, you're in America. We have that in Africa. So I ask you today, are we really united?
Thank you so much. Wow. A round of applause. I think let us, on that note, start with Moho's question. I think that is a good point to start. Is there unity among Black people, not just on the African continent, but in America as well? Brother Ayo?
Okay. It's a yes and a no question. As a group, the condition of our people in America today, is there a consciousness for unification with African people across the board? No. The best of our people, the strongest, the people like me who are totally committed to the well-being of African people internationally. It's a small group, but they're powerful. Yes, there's unification. However, the difficulty is it's only a small group of us there. And go ahead and brace. Can I tell y'all the truth? No, I need y'all, that's one person said, that didn't sound like you want the truth. Yeah, y'all got to give me permission now. I'm in your house now. I'm home, but can I tell you the truth?
Tell us the truth. Come on.
There's only a small, almost tiny amount of your leadership that actually want African unity. They want bourgeois privilege for them to have wealth, for you to be enslaved, and then complaining about it and them saying what they can do. But the revolutionaries who would change things, the Sobukwe's, who we forget to mention all the time, the Marcus Garveys that we don't mention, the Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad's, the people we don't talk about, those people who fight for us, they do exist, and we have a desire for unification, but it's going to require both ends. On our end, you're going to have to find us and allow us to partner, but then you're going to have to help us find the leadership that you have that wants those partnerships.
I think he has said it all. The reality is that our continent has gotten to a place where political narratives have continually divided African people almost on a daily basis. The African Union have just concluded its own summit. And all the heads of states that were there, except the 3 from the Sahel. And you know why the Sahel were not part of it? Because they're doing something different. The cohort that met in Addis Ababa, did I say cohort? Yeah. That group that met in Addis Ababa is very uncomfortable to allow what the Sahelian residents have done. At some stage, the story must not be, we're going to talk a bit more. It must be, we're taking it now.
That's right.
And that's what those 3 presidents have done. Very unconventional. But somebody decided to define what insanity looks like. Doing the same thing, same way, expecting different results.
The next question was from Uliabona about economics, and I think I'll start that with Utok.
Okay. Well, finishing off the definition of insanity is the same thing to do when it comes to economic emancipation. Why are we trying to do things that have not worked and repackage them again so that they can look and smell different? But they have not worked. So why are we trying to do that as a continent and then blame people from different aspects? That is why we are not moving forward. We, the citizens, have the power through our vote, for example. But why do we still do the same thing we did last time and complain about the results that we're staying with? It's not a South African problem, it's a continental problem. There is something around the psyche and the mindset of African people of enjoying status quo. The radicalism that we are seeing with the Sahelian presidents is what Africans are yearning, but they are yearning for that in the shadows. We are lacking the grit of young people and men and women who stood against forces of injustice to the point of paying the ultimate price. As long as that realization and consciousness is still far-fetched and removed from our reality, I can assure you the status quo will continue to persist. So we're still going to talk about economic exclusion 30 years from today. I'm not a prophet of doom, but I can tell you that because history is repeating itself. The folks who died on our behalf in 1970s died for the same question, isn't it? But 30 years later, 50-something years later, we're still talking about it. So what will be different 50 years from today? I'll let you to answer that.
I just have a follow-up to that. I'm so sorry to hold you up, Brother Ayo. The follow-up to that is when you say that Africans are yearning for what is happening in the Sahel region, but they're yearning for it from the shadows. What would need to happen for the rest of Africa to, one, admit what they need, two, find for the leaders of the continent to find a balance? Is there a balance to be had between taking things in the direction that the Sahel region is taking or the other direction?
That's a very powerful question. And one of the difficulties of trying to get to such frontiers is because our political leadership on our continent is very much interested, as my brother Ayo has said, in keeping the status quo. So what are we seeing currently as terms of why they want to keep the status quo? The moment you and I want to do a bit of talking, political talking, they switch off the internet. Yeah? When we want to do a little bit more talking and hold them accountable, they arrest us. The one who speaks a lot and louder. Think about what has happened in Uganda. Just today, if you Google right now, you will see the president of Gabon has switched off social media indefinitely. Google it now. Yeah. So there's so many examples on our continent where repressive, autocratic political leadership is uninterested in giving citizens opportunities to redefine their development. And so there is a debate already going on, because if you think about the Saharian leadership, it's all military men. Because they only understand one thing, forward. And there is no talk that is not aligned with them. Otherwise you face your death quickly. But should we be embracing such forms of leadership as a continent for us to change? But maybe because the Sahelian governments have decided the only way to emancipate ourselves from the shackles of colonialism and underdevelopment on our continent, something radical has to happen. But there are only 3 out of 54. The odds are still very far against them. But revolution has to start somewhere and with someone. And these 3 presidents have decided they will be the someones that will create a template, hopefully, to spark interest. So the question to what needs to happen, there is a template. At some stage, people must decide enough is enough.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Doc.
Because he said enough is enough, I'm going to blame him for what I'm saying now. This is him, what I'm about to say, okay? I didn't say this, but you can read between the lines. Around the 700s AD, Africans from the West went into Southern Europe. They controlled it until 1492. 700 years of domination of somebody else's house. They're not there now. Right now, how many Moors control Spain? How much economic wealth do they have in Spain? Okay, what I'm saying is, since the transatlantic slave trade, and maybe even since the Arab slave trade, Africa has had uninvited guests controlling the destiny of African people. I don't know the date or the time, but I hope it's coming soon. Just like Southern Europe. There are no Moors there controlling their economics and their politics. There'll be no one but Africans on the African continent controlling African politics and economics.
Thank you. I think Uzi Tamo's question has also been answered, has it not? Yes. Uzi Kalo, sorry. Uzi Kalo, ask please. Uzi Kalo, has that question been answered? Okay. The last round of questions. We have, okay. Short, sharp, to the point, quickly. Yes, we'll start with the gentleman in the white shirt.
Good evening, Doc. Good evening, Brother Ayu, and our esteemed facilitator for tonight. Mine are not, because I did not want to speak, because probably on a lighter note, I'm in the same boat as you. I work in that international relations space, and I've been commenting too much on Trump. I couldn't go to US. But don't worry, I went to China, I'm fine. Doc, quick one, man, Doc, that I want to check with you. If you note the historical evolution of the South African society itself, and how much since 1994 the middle class has grown in this country, would you say partly that part of the problem that creates divisions within the black society, and I'm including Americans in this sense, because class base is also this class mobility, and therefore people assume certain positions. Would you then say that the growth of the black middle class, let's say in both countries, has created a certain taste of standards that has created an interest of the few than the majority? That's my first question. Because to me, the essence of what we're discussing now boils down to what we call capital accumulation. Two, would you say in the global balance of forces currently as led by Trump, we are starting in what Huntington theory of waves of democratization calls as regress of democratization in the world? Looking at how Trump forces tariffs and try to manage certain, let me say, economies because of what he wants to benefit. Let's say, practical example would be Venezuela and its own oil. Would you then say it's a start of regress of democratization in the world? Thanks.
Then, I'm sorry, I missed your name, Buti.
My name is Dalutolo. My
Dalutolo.
surname, my surname is Jacobs. Thanks.
So, the next question, this is the last round of questions, by the way. So, Sicela Usisi in the white shirt. No, the mics are not working.
All right, I'll be very brief. Greetings to everyone in the room. I'm Sikamo. He is Zikamo. I am Sikamo.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the correction.
Yeah, I wanted to speak directly after him because it only makes sense that
That's
Sikamo
perfect.
speaks. You know.
Perfect. Love that.
Yeah, I think it's just a comment from my side. I'm from Doxa Family Care, which is an organization that works quite closely with CANRAD. It's roughly in the same space that the sitting of this magnitude is held under. I think firstly is to commend, the magnitude of the sitting, because you find that conversations of this nature aren't conversations that we have on a daily basis. It's not conversations that I'd have with my friend or my colleague at some point. And as I said, I'm part of DOXA, which roughly we do, or we bring conversations of this nature, but to school, to learners at school level, And what sat with me, or what stuck with me, facilitator, is a question that you actually asked. It was a rhetorical question. I noted it down. E.T., do we as Africans respond to who they say we are, or do we know who we are? It took me back to, as I said, we work with schools, a lot. And if you go and ask a learner at school today, or Ngomso, ask them what do they want to be, part of what they'd say is they'd want to go and settle in America at some point, because that's what has been put forward. It's that life, America is the place to be. America or anywhere outside of Africa. But conversations of like the one that is held today actually says something to us as young people in this room today. You know, Doc made mention of enough is enough. I think it's high time that we as young people of today realize that maybe we should actually take the first step forward. You know, because there really is a long way to go. Because as I said, you ask a learner in school, they want to go to America. 50 years later, is a high possibility that we'll still be speaking, you know, same conversation. So really, maybe it settles with us who are in the room, the people who have the heart for this, because there is another element, you know. We can't push it on everyone. The people who have the heart, you know, to bring things like Brother Ayo made mention of Jesse. Maybe some of us didn't know that an African was the person who actually invented the cell phone, you know.
Yeah.
So I really am commending, you know, this sitting. Thank you so much. It was just a comment.
Thank you so much. Thank you. One last question. One last question.
Thank you so much. Greetings to everyone. My name is Mpumelelo. I'm studying economics here. My question is very short and straight to the point. How do we use our African art, aesthetics, and culture to empower the young individuals of today to shift their minds from being slaves to being enslaved? Because what I've realized is that even through colonization times like apartheid, African people still found a way to nourish or shine in a form of art like jazz music, hip hop, cultural music, spiritual music. So how should the modern youth use that to unite as Africans using African art? Thank you.
One very last, I promise, very last.
I have a question online coming from Mr. Vuyondo Dana. South Africa has been a democratic state for less than 35 years. In your opinion, how long do you think a nation to take to relieve itself from the roots of oppression and colonization? What lessons can we learn from nations that have faced similar history of oppression? This is to both speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I think let us start with that question Umpumelelo was asking about. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Umpumelelo was asking about leveraging the arts. We will start with you, Brother Ayo.
First of all, I want to thank this young man. I want to thank all of you young people. I love what you're doing. These are very serious questions. That young man asked something that I was supposed to talk about, but I didn't try to force it. Thank you. Okay, I got to make this quick because this will be long. Okay. We created something. This young brother right here knows. When I came my first time, we gave him, it's called African insurrection music. We shared it with him because of what this young man just said. Living in the West, before you hear it sometimes, we hear what's coming to the African world community because we right there by these folks that are doing it. So we start trying to plot a course to correct it. Let me apologize on behalf of African people in America. This is an apology. Let me make this clear. What you are watching on television that you're bopping your heads to and you're emulating, I know you are. I know you. I'm not asking if you are. I know you are. The whole world is. That's not us. That's the enemy inside of us paying us to defile our women, to defile our own lives. Just think about it as an African. How sensible is it if we are enslaved by people who aren't African? Is it for us to be singing songs about going around and shooting each other? Does that make sense? You're enslaved by someone else, but I'm gonna shoot somebody and you're gonna call them a word that was used to enslave you. Is that something we came up with? That's something we are being funded to do, to make you think, oh, these people got lots of money and like killing each other. And they got money they can throw around when they do it and drive fancy cars and have half-naked women. This is wonderful. I want to go live there. That doesn't make sense. So what we do to what that brother said, this is the brilliance of what his question is. The essence and core of every economy comes from the culture. Culture is what a people do. If your enemies create your culture, you will hate yourself. And in order to hate yourself, you have to defile yourself. You'll have to change your hair. You'll have to change your skin color. You'll have to do drugs because you don't want to do better. You want to do worse. Everything that you spend your money on will kill you. If you take control of your own self-respect and culture, every piece of food you make, you're the ones that plant it. That's what makes it most important for you to eat it. You planted the food. Your farmers make the money. You get the money. Every piece of clothes you wear was stitched by an African. This is Ghanaian. By an African, which means what? Somebody's making money off taking actively and producing something. How do we do it with the music? Instead of singing about their culture, which is enslaving and killing us, start using that culture like you talking about here now with the Black Power shirt, start talking about your blackness. Start singing about your blackness. Start developing products around your blackness that you have control over, that your grandparents that live on the farm somewhere in the West can do. Get them to grow something that you can take and use something and sell, and use your culture and your idea for freedom as the leverage of your economy. It can be done. It was done. If you want to follow where it was done, follow Thomas Sankara in the 1980s, where he took the culture of the people and began to steer it, and then the people began to wear their own clothes, and now that lifts the economy, and now you're not a slave anymore.
I think he has said it all, but also to add to that element of us African people owning our products and making them proudly ours really makes it very important, like what I see my brother wearing there. That's Fubu, I think, yeah, from Ghana. I don't know how many of you followed the story about the Ghanaian president when he visited, or the Zambian president visited recently Ghana. And there was a whole story when Zambians said, the Zambian people said that that's a blouse instead of Fubu. They didn't understand that that's a national outfit of the Ghanaian people. But you see, as he's saying, some of this is because we've been poisoned as African people by Western narratives that make us hate what we produce. And that makes it difficult for you and I and some other people who are not in this room to want to appreciate that you can buy African outfit and be comfortable with it. Those are some of the reminiscences of colonial project. Because it started by planting self-hatred that has now been perpetuated to get to a place where Africanness has been reduced to nothing. So how about starting from there? You make up your mind that before the end of this year, if you don't have an African outfit, you're going to get one.
That's right. That's right.
Simple step, but forward.
Yeah.
I believe that so much. And I have made a point that, well,
There you go.
this is Ghanaian, and this is Togan, that every African country I have an opportunity to visit, I come back with the outfit. Why? Because I believe in the African dream.
That's right.
And before I mobilize 1,000 people to think like me, I start me first.
Yeah.
So how about you doing the same? Yeah. And see the influence that we have now. Of course, I've influenced Prof. I'm joking. but Prof will tell you, it's not one time I've gifted him with something African. Because it has to start somewhere, colleagues.
Yeah.
And somewhere it's not outside this room. Somewhere it's here.
Yeah.
It's you.
That's right.
So if we have to change that, it starts with me. If we can be able to add that. Okay, I'll leave that there.
Yeah.
But secondly, to talk about the question of middle class, my brother has intentions that we don't want to go home today, because that's a very difficult question and very, complicated in our culture, in our context of our economy. But safe to say this, I'm one of those proponents who don't believe that a black middle class exists, especially in this country. It's a created one that is it's actually rooted in political alliances. So it's not because it was a natural evolvement to become African middle class. It is created to give us a sense or an identity that we don't own, that we belong to a special class other than the other. One of the many examples that you can think about that is the levels of indebtedness of this black middle class in this country. They virtually own nothing. Everything Even to some extent, the bed they lay on is a debt thing. The TV they watch, they have an account. The clothes they are wearing have an account. The car they are driving, don't even talk about that. So you can't call that middle class. That is a false middle class. Because when you remove those alliances and things that make them think that they've owned them, they're actually super poor. I don't think you wanted this conversation today, but I think, Prof, you need to bring this conversation at some stage. Because part of this problem of seeing a class that we don't belong to because we have not created sufficient effort to belong to that class creates a false impression. So we go to institutions of higher learning like these ones, we think that paper is what is going to move us from point A to point B. But majority of us in this room, even us who have gone through this process, we know it doesn't do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't do that. But somebody's lying to us. Yeah. And majority who think if they get there, they will find it all. So my thought is that we do not have a sustainable middle class in our country. We have a created one that is manipulated to sustain itself. And are we going to get there? Not until some radical things happen in our economic and political system. Because this system is deliberate. It's created to drive us to think we are better than. We have heard a lot of stories about African people in our own country. Once they change status, don't want to see their relatives. Yeah. I didn't say they're in this room. I just said they are there.
Yeah.
Why? Because there's that false narrative that once you get certain types of liabilities, I call them liabilities because so long as you're paying for it, it's not yours.
That's true.
Yeah? So we've created a system where if these potential liabilities become our identifier markers of who we have become in our society, then we started thinking that we are actually different from the others. It doesn't take time before we fall. Because when the debt collectors come to collect what they own, we go back even far back than the ones we've left behind. It's a deliberate political project. And I would like to leave it there.
Brother. Money. No?
Not money.
Not money. Not salt.
When I first came to South Africa, people told me that Baba Sobukwe, he was in isolation. And the only thing he could do when the brothers walked by him is he picked up the soil. Don't ever forget what this fight is about. It's about our land. Why am I saying that? This is general. I'm giving you general wisdom now, all right? Talking warfare, all right? Y'all listening?
You want to listen?
Y'all listening? The real trick for us to figure out, because it's not really about our economics. Because if you're a revolutionary, you're a freedom fighter, it'd be better to be rich than poor, because you can pay for revolution. But it doesn't really matter. The real thread is not how much money we have. The thread is, have we forgotten what we're fighting for? What am I saying? If a person has $0, if they're middle class or if they're rich, if they know what we're fighting for, they haven't forgotten, we have to find a way to connect us across those different economic fields. Because if we have the guy who's the best physical fighter in the world, but he don't have no money. The most beautiful woman you've ever seen in your life, she doesn't have money. And then two rich people, if they all believe in the freedom of African people, well, we got all the money we need. We got all the fighting we need. And a pretty woman can get anything she wants in the world anyway. So everything we want, we can have. Y'all know how it works. You put them together and we can work together. What I'm saying is, across our economic strata, it's not about how much money you have. Whatever access you have, to help improve our condition. We got to work together across those, find each other. What you don't have that I have, I lend that to you. What I don't have that you have, you lend that to me. Together, we move to the collective end that we're trying to gain.
I think before I give an opportunity for the question that Vuyo asked about the democracy and lessons that South Africa can take from other countries, is a follow-up question to that, where it's difficult to have the revolutionary mindset if you are still battling with bread and butter issues. It's difficult for me to get up in the morning and lead a revolution if I have not eaten in 3 days. That is a question that I think is very important for us to have in this context, especially, because it's one thing to say we are not united. Maybe we are not united because someone is unable to even come to the community meeting because they have not eaten. So those questions, how do we move forward while also addressing that?
I'm going to take it back to what I said. And I like the question, because you said make it practical.
Yeah.
Okay. If we have a middle class, the question is, were they trained that whenever they get something, to reach down to the people who don't have something and offer them a way up? If they haven't been trained to do that, then they're going to hold on to what they have and they're not going to take any risks. You're not going to get any change. That's why I said, when the child is born, you don't know if they're going to be poor, middle class, or you don't know what they're going to be that day. What you do know is what you teach them then. The missing piece is not economics. The missing piece is that the few who get through the cracks were not properly educated to remember what you were fighting for in the beginning. And so people not fighting now, they're not going to get anything because the people who have it to give to them are not trained and have the mentality to do so. So why is that important? Because then our enemies have an easy trick. Just give money to the ones that won't give back, and then train them not to give back, and then train them to think they're better than the ones that don't have. Then they can make us fight. That's why I said the wisdom is that we don't need to talk about this. This needs to become our education system no matter where we are. In our homes, these are the things we need to be talking about. The people who really sacrifice the most for us, those are the people we forget. That's why we end up in the situation we end up in. It's here. It's not here.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Ayo. So to answer that online question about lessons learned, so the first thing is the change of mindset, isn't it? Because if we can change the way we think about ourselves as African people, perhaps we can start moving towards the idea of emancipating ourselves from the shackles of colonialism and things that have been left behind that are troubling us today. So the first is the change of mindset. But second thing that I think, in my view, could also emancipate all ourselves, it's what our dear sister spoke about, our own African identity. So can African people start genuinely loving each other and interested in the welfare of one another? Because it cannot be that philosophical Ubuntu concept that we talk about, but in practice it doesn't exist in most places. Yeah? So just the idea of having an identity that makes me appreciate my Africanness and I don't feel apologetic about it, that's where my freedom begins as an individual. And then I start seeing you the way I see myself. It is embarrassing sometimes when you think about the kind of atrocities that we Africans subject ourselves to each other about. Is it not shameful that an African woman, an African girl, feels unsafe among Africans? Please. Wow. That's hurtful, isn't it? But why is it happening? Because our African identity is distorted. Why is it other races don't do that to themselves? So let's fix that African identity thing, because we fix the mindset that I'm no longer a slave. I'm free. And I'm a slave to the extent that I admit that I want to remain as a slave. Yeah. Those who our forefathers who went and made America prosperous, at some stage they didn't see themselves as slaves. They saw themselves as free. Yes, they had chains, but in here, they were free. They could do the hard work they had to do and created possibilities for themselves and for all of us. Now at least we have something to talk about. But the next thing we have to fix now, our generation, as African people, is our identity. Can we see each other as African first? Let me give you one of the examples. The African Union, about 10 or so years ago, if I'm not mistaken, ratified what they call African Mobility Protocol. That was meant to allow Africans to move across the continent without visas. Can I shock you? Our own very country has not ratified that protocol. So, a few days ago, in the month of April, I'm invited to go and speak at African Summit in Accra. So I get a ticket that tells me I have to go to Dubai first. I mean, I go out of the continent first, then I go to Accra. I refused. Today, the same African Union changed the ticket, and I'm going with South African Airlines from Johannesburg to Accra. So somebody has to stand for it before they interpret to you that you're a super class and allow something like that to happen. It does not start with 1 million of us, it starts with one of us. Refuse to be getting to a place where you will lose your identity. It doesn't matter what forms it comes with it. I refuse to go out of my continent to come back to my continent.
That's right.
No, that won't happen. But it's also inconvenient, my brother. It's expensive, but inconvenient. From here to Dubai is 18 hours. From Johannesburg to Accra is 7. Simple maths, isn't it? So my point is this. A few of African countries have refused to ratify that protocol so to allow free African mobility. So we are seeing now a few countries that have decided enough is enough. So Ghana and Zambia last week, go and Google and see that the presidents of these two countries have agreed to remove visas. Rwanda did it, has opened today. I can tell you, you can pack your bags and go to Kigali and you get your 30 days. They don't care what you're coming to do so long as it's legal. Yeah? You can move from here now and go to Senegal. You don't need a visa. Why is it only 4 or 5 countries have done out of 54? Where there is a huge mother body like African Union that has given us an instrument, Prof, to nullify borders and visas, so that you as an African, you can go to any African country without feeling like other. But this dream is only realizing now because the first person who brought the idea of borderless Africa, the late Colonel Gaddafi, may his soul rest in peace, was killed, among many other things, for suggesting that African people can move freely in their own land. So you know what? Where does that start? We must also refuse to get into countries where, imagine if all other African countries, heads of state decide. I was following what was happening in Summit very closely because those are the things that bother me. Why should we have a talk show of heads of state? But a simple ratification to allow people to move from one country to another must require effort, must require us to carry placards. Please. That is you can't even wrap your head around it, isn't it? Why is it now, as I conclude,
yes.
I'm very passionate about this, why are we right now, through what they are calling African Free Trade Agreement, is still not ratified by other countries? That you cannot sell things from South Africa to the next country. you said it.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Yes.
Yes, I want to say this because it just really hit me. Two quick things, and I'm done. One, I'm going to ask Brother Sanwabo, I hope he would be able to do this, but this would be so important. I met the brothers and sisters at the University of Ouagadougou, Kizerbo, so much love for the English Lavas Club. They speak the English, they speak French, but they're learning English there. They're in Burkina Faso, and I've been keeping in touch with them. If you all would like to, because they're learning English and they're speaking it, but they're young African students in the college, if you all would like to get on a group with them, leave your phone numbers and put the plus, whatever the number is, the whole thing, so we can get you on WhatsApp. And we'll create a WhatsApp group for South African students to be talking to the young students in Burkina Faso, and we're doing it with some of the Kenyan students too, to put you all in contact so y'all can talk as young college students across. You got it? That's one. So he's gonna get the information, give it to me, then we're gonna start a group and then y'all just talk. I'm not in it, y'all just talk.
Yeah.
Now, the young brother said something, since he did it, y'all talking, you talking, brother, so now I'm gonna put it on y'all. Y'all ready? This y'all homework, all right? He said, what can we do? Everybody loves music that comes from South Africa. Y'all already know that. Make the music soundtrack to the AES, to Burkina Faso, to Mali, and to Niger. Make the soundtrack that people dance to in the clubs, dance to here. We don't need no profanity, no over-sexuality. Just make it freedom, Africanness, liberation. Make people sing to it, dance to it, and play it all across this continent. Can y'all do that? Yeah. Come on, y'all, South African, can y'all do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Colleagues, it has been such an honor. I cannot believe 2 hours is gone. I wish we had more time. Thank you so much. Super humbled as a young journalist who is still younging. It's such an honor to have had both of you gentlemen. Thank you, brother. And thank you for the invitation as well from the university and from Conrad. I think in my closing, I would like to just reflect on, just to take us back to the first conversation that we had. My first interaction with Reverend Jackson, I was fresh out of varsity, still bright-eyed and bushy-haired, thinking I would write one article and save the world. And I remember when I met him, I was still working in my former life at the public broadcaster, and he was so humble. It was so jarring for me, the level at which, how he treated me like I mattered as an intern. And fast forward to yesterday, when the news broke of his passing, and one of the shows that I produced for spoke to one of his contemporaries, a gentleman by the name of Wilton Lawrence Larry Wallace, who worked with him in many other aspects. And he said something that stood out to me. He said the Reverend, from a very young age, had a mantra that every day he would say, I am somebody. I am a somebody. I am a somebody. And it is such an important thing to do, because I think at that point when he was meeting me, he didn't know the impact he had, but he was already treating me like I was a somebody without even having to say it. He did not even have to articulate the fact that I was a somebody. And his treatment of me reignited my own fire for human rights activism, my own, whatever was inherently in me. So I think that is a good way to part ways. Before I hand over to Uputi over there, is for us to realize that we need to remind ourselves that we are somebody. We are the people that will change this. It's disheartening, but we can change it. And there's no futuristic person who will come and will solve. No. If anything, in the future we'll be old and tired and we will not have the energy to be doing these things. So I would advise that we start now. Wherever you are, if you need to make a change right now where you are, look around you and see who's next to me, who's in line with what I want to do in advancing the narrative of Africa not being a whole country and Africa not being a disease-ridden place. What do I want to do with the community that I have? Let's do that. I think that is the only way we can continue the legacies of people like the Reverend Jackson and Utatu Nelson Mandela, is for us to make sure that it doesn't regress. There's no regression in advancing the conversation on Africa, because we are all aware of what's happening in the geopolitical landscape at the moment. A lot of things are happening, a lot of people are doing a lot of things. So we are the only people who can change it. Thank you so much. I will give over to Uputsono.
Mamudlamini, siyabulela kakhulu, a phenomenon black woman. Your facilitation skills demonstrated themselves throughout the proceedings tonight. Sicela ke simphi izandla. Siyabulela kakhulu. Whenever the wealth of the world was built by black hands, there too lies the unbroken spirit of Africa. For the African child in the diaspora does not merely contribute to history, they shape it. This is a reflection from an anonymous Pan-Africanist. With these words, ladies and gentlemen, we are reminded that the prosperity of America cannot be separated from the labor, intellect, creativity, and resilience of African descendants who helped build its economic foundation, enrich its cultural life, and expand its democratic ideals. In the enduring traditions of Obaba Umakas Gavi, as they were mentioned, Kwame Nkrumah, and in the spirit of black consciousness, articulated by Obabu Steve Bandubiko, and the African vision of Obabu Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, Namdi Benjamin Azikiwe, Julius Kambarage Nyerere, Amilcar Lopez Cabral, and others. Tonight's lecture has deepened our understanding of the inseparable link between Africa and its diaspora. We extend our profound gratitude to Dr. Paul Kariuki from Democracy Development Program in Durban for his illuminating address. Baba Upol Siabulel. Thank you. To Brother Ayo Kimathi, who's popularly known as the irritated genie, for his thoughtful and engaging response, which enriched this vital transatlantic dialogue. Your contribution to conversations as articulated and alluded by the facilitator on black self-determination, historical consciousness, and community empowerment adds an important dimension to this dialogue. May the reflections shared this evening strengthen our solidarity, sharpen our scholarship, and review our collective commitment to justice, dignity, and the global advancement of African people everywhere. My brothers and sisters, as you depart this evening, may you carry with you not only the knowledge we have shared this evening, but the responsibility it demands to honor the sacrifices of our ancestors, to defend the dignity of our people, and to advance the unfinished work of African unity and the global black liberation. Let us live here reminded that Whenever we stand in the world, we stand as Africa's living legacy. And the future is ours to shape. Amandla! Black power to Amandla! I-Afrika! Izwe lethu! Siyabulela kakhulu ngalo mazwi sigqibile. Speaker, do you have anything to add before we depart? All right, okay, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. The request is that if you can use this, there are some packs outside, some smaller refreshments, you can grab one, so we can use this left entrance. Siyabulela kakhulu nangam, so engozi. All right, the gentleman, if you can...